Hello, everyone. My name is John Hakel, and welcome back to the Rebuild SoCal Zone. On today's episode, I am joined by Kelly Candaele. Kelly has such a successful career and held incredible titles such as journalist, filmmaker, labor organizer for 15 years, and political representative for the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, and several others. We welcome Kelly, and we'd like to talk a little more about who Kelly is. Welcome, Kelly.
Great to be here.
Kelly, for our listeners, can you give us a little background on who you are?
Well, I grew up in Lompoc, California, which is just an hour north of Santa Barbara. I was born in Canada, and my parents came down here for opportunity. My mother came to the United States to play professional baseball, of all things. So it was great to have such a talented mother in a very unique way. She played 5 years in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League before I was born. But I grew up in Lompoc and in a working class family. My father basically was a janitor and a painter before he got into the Electrical Workers Union. And that's when we figured out what a vacation was and what a pension was and what health insurance was. So basically a working class family in Lompoc, and I was one of the first to go to college in my family, along with my twin brother, and my older brother Rick might have been the first in our family to, certainly was the first in our family to go to college. So it was kind of a educational upward mobility story, you might say.
Excellent. Now that you're part of the Rebuild team as our go-to documentary person for Southern California, we've had the opportunity to look at your work and find out so much more about how, when SB1 monies were allocated and how they affect jobs in Southern California. Looking at what you've done and having an opportunity to have the public look at them, can you give a little background on why you shot those beautiful videos and whatever else you may find when you're on these projects?
Well, I think it's important, particularly in this case where you have SB1 funds that are being spent around the state, and a good deal of those funds being spent in Southern California. I think it's really important for the public to see where that money is going. And it's very important because there's a lot of distrust in institutions these days. But when people see these great projects that are being completed throughout Southern California, whether it's widening a freeway in Riverside County, going up a very steep and dangerous grade, whether it's building a bike path in Santa Barbara that separates the bikers from the traffic, whether it's building a new street in South Los Angeles that allows people going to and from church to cross the street safely, whether it's building ingress and egress in Inglewood for the new stadium there. All those are so concrete. It might sound melodramatic, but these projects save lives and are going to save lives. Whether it's widening the freeways in Adelanto so that there's fewer head-on collisions and that's safer, whether it's raising the height of the bridges on the 60 freeway so that trucks don't hit the bottom of those bridges, which has happened out there. It is melodramatic to say it, but all of these projects are going to save lives. They're going to be good for the economy. They're going to be good for the environment. They're going to be good for workers. There's so many places where there's so many benefits that come from these projects that I felt, and I know you felt, and our union partners felt, and our contractors felt, that the public should see in a concrete way what's being done with that money.
I want to go back to a comment that you just made, workers. I think it's so important for our listeners to understand that when this gas tax money is being spent to upgrade California, especially in the critical needs of bridges, roads, there is an element there that may be not truly understood, is the opportunity for workers to have not a job, but a career. And I think it's important, especially with COVID and everything else now, these people continue as a critical need, continue to go in and making sure Southern California infrastructure is safe. But from a pure workers concept, what do you see in the younger folks' faces and even the older workers when they're on these projects?
The workers that I've seen on these projects, it's just a bunch of wonderful stories. I mean, on the Inglewood project that I covered, there was a young man I met there. His name was Brangier Bradley, and he is from Inglewood, was working on the project in Inglewood. And he told me that growing up, he thought his future, the best that he could have from his future, was working in a fast food restaurant for minimum wage. And he told me about his life now after being in the Carpenters Union, having a pension, having vacation pay, being able to take his kids to the doctor, taking care of his kids' health care, being able to raise a family, buy a home. And that's just profound. That's profound. And he even said his son now looks at his future and sees possibilities that maybe he would have never imagined before. That's life transforming. And it was life transforming with the carpenters that I met, the operating engineers that I met, and the laborers that I met. There's 100 stories like that I've heard out on these jobs. A beautiful young woman named Julia Padilla in North San Diego County on that project, who is a laborer, part of the laborers union. And she said she looked at what she was building. It happened to be a bridge over a lagoon. And she said it was like a painting emerging, brush stroke by brush stroke. A piece of art that she said she looked at every day and saw it emerge. And that was all work that was done by working people, men and women, that build these projects. And a lot of people don't realize that. They don't go up by themselves. They're not built by robots. They're built by the hard work of men and women that build our buildings, build our bridges, build our freeways, build our schools, build our ports. Everything that we see that's part of our infrastructure is built by men and women. One of the other great experiences I had was actually shooting at midnight out on the 60 freeway, where they were raising up the bridges, because local residents had told me that in the middle of the night they would hear these loud crashes, and it would actually be a truck, delivering goods from one place to another that had run into the top of the bridge. And Craig Contreras of the operating engineers was the superintendent on that project. And we were shooting at midnight in the middle of the freeway, cars streaming by back and forth on both sides of the freeway. And I was so impressed with Craig because his primary concern was about safety for his workers. In the middle of the freeway, working with $2 million cranes, lifting up a 100-foot long rebar cage and placing it into the ground. And Craig was so proud about his skills. He was so proud about the safety standards that he was enforcing on that job, and so proud about the skills that he learned in his apprenticeship program, which is a 4 to 5 year apprenticeship program for the operating engineers. And it was just so impressive to see him handling that crew, making sure they were safe, making sure the quality of work was excellent, and doing it all at midnight in the middle of a freeway, on the 60 freeway in the median, as cars were going by in both directions.
Those, again, highlight just the opportunities, again, for the public when they cross over, go under, whatever they do. There are lives involved in each and every one of those projects. And to have, at the end of the day, those folks, like so many others, walk away from the project knowing that they did that they had an opportunity to make sure California is safe for whoever travels the roads, school buses, whatever they do, they know that they have been part of that. And what a fantastic opportunity and a career that these folks have had and will continue to have. Kelly, listening to all of those stories that you've been able to video for us, is there one that maybe from your internal point of view that was striking?
Well, there were so many projects that I've looked at and filmed that are big projects. But I have to say, the one that struck me right in my heart, it was the first project that I did in Southgate. And it wasn't because of something big. It was because of something small but very meaningful. And it was simply seeing someone use the ramps that are cutaways into curbs to move from one side of the street to another in a wheelchair. And it just struck me that what a change in this person's life, the ability to be able to move around a city, just like all of us take for granted, to go to the store, to go visit a friend, to go shopping, that this was a commitment by a society, by a community, by a state, to people that we don't even know. But when we see something like that, we know we've done the right thing, that investment that we've made of public dollars is benefiting people who need it the most and improving their lives, of people that may have disadvantages that we may never know. But when you see something like that, it's really warming to the heart.
Again, it goes to show you how your gas tax dollars, you have not really sure where it all goes, but to have that happen and to create better quality of life for those that need it the most, I don't think there's a better way of spending your taxpayer dollars. Kelly, interesting as we talk about the lives of our workers and what, as we continue to rebuild the future for Southern California. But it's amazing how, if you go back in history, some things that our founding fathers looked at as relates to the beginning of building the United States. And you and I chatted. Can you just a little background on the story that you told me regarding Alexander Hamilton?
Well, Alexander Hamilton is having a star moment right now, a Broadway show that so many people have seen. You can see it on television. And there's a reason for that. I mean, a number of historians, including Gordon Wood, who's one of our greatest historians of the Revolutionary period, Ron Chernow, who wrote the biography of Alexander Hamilton, which was the basis for the Broadway show, both said that essentially we are living in the world that Alexander Hamilton created. And the reason for that was when he was Treasury Secretary under George Washington, one of the main things that he was advocating for our country was investment in infrastructure, that he wanted us to compete with England. He saw the only way that we would become a power in the world is if we had a dynamic economy. And one of the ways to do that was to invest in infrastructure, ports, canals, roads. He thought that was good for the country. He thought it was good for developing business, and he thought it was good for our standing in the world. So as we discuss this vision of how to go forward, whether you're from a red state or a blue state or a purple state or anything in between, I think there could be a consensus that one of the ways that we knit our society together, one of the ways that we knit one another together is through building our infrastructure, whether it's our ports, our airports, our rail, our schools, our bridges, our freeways. There's not a state in the nation that doesn't want safer roads or a better airport. And I think that's a real possibility of having some alignments that we don't even know about right now, but it's a way that I think some consensus can be built for the future. And I'm just so proud and happy that I get to film some of these great projects, which are going to occur right here in Southern California. And I think that the more people see them, the more that they're going to realize that we're all in this together. We all benefit when we have a great infrastructure. Business, labor, workers, first responders, they're on board with this. So if we can make that commitment and keep that commitment going, I think we're going to have a great future here.
Kelly, thank you so much. For those that want to know a little more about Kelly, Kelly, why don't you let the listening audience know where they can find you?
Well, I have a website, kellycandaele.com, and that's where a lot of my writings are located, some of my films that I've worked on over the years and this and that. So that's where you can find me.
Well, that's all for today's episode on Rebuild SoCal Zone. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Kelly Candaele, for joining us today. Join us again next month when we'll have another exciting guest. Make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast on all of your platforms so you'll never miss an exciting episode.